Hello. In this section of the course, we're going to take the drums and cymbals we just learned about and figure out how and when to play them so that they fit into the 4/4 common time that we learned about earlier. If you're watching this short lesson on its own and you're unfamiliar with how time in a musical sense is thought about, put together, and notated, you can learn all about that in my larger course, Become a Rock, Pop, and Country Drummer. I'm going to leave information on how to get enrolled in the full course in the description below this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I'll reach out to you later to let you know when the full course enrollment is open. Hop on over to backbeatdrumschool.com to learn more. Now, let's build the basic rock beat one drum and one cymbal at a time. In common time, the bass drum beat is frequently played on beats 1 and 3. Let's count out our 4 beats, playing the bass drum on every beat, and then we'll just play the bass drum on beats 1 and 3 so you can hear the difference. Now let's play along with a metronome set to 60 beats per minute. I'd encourage you to use a metronome as you play along so you can clearly hear and feel the time, and so you can calibrate your own playing as you start out. This is a harder habit to form once you've been at it for a while, so start now. Now, see if you can play along to that bass drum beat accurately for 2 minutes without stopping. That's going to feel like a really long time, but stick with it. Once you can keep time accurately at 60 beats per minute, then slowly increase the BPM on your metronome, just a little bit at a time. I'd suggest small increments whenever you're learning anything new. I'm going to push us ahead to 80 BPM so you can hear how that sounds. All right, let's start to figure out the hi-hat. In common time, the hi-hat beat is frequently played on all 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's count out our 4 beats, playing the hi-hat on every beat. I'll demonstrate this first at 60 beats per minute and again at 80 beats per minute. And a word about counting out loud. I encourage it. You'll see me counting out loud or mouthing the count in this video, and it's mostly so you can internalize the beat you're playing as you go further into establishing solid time. It also helps to count out loud when you're trying to break down or analyze a more complex beat. So it's another thing that is good to build habit around early on in your playing. All right, we just saw and heard the hi-hat playing quarter notes. The hi-hat is also frequently subdivided into eighth notes, which means in a bar of 4/4 music, we will play exactly twice as many notes as what we just played. In terms of keeping our counting straight, these additional notes will be given the and sound. So you'll see and hear me counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's hear how eighth notes sound on the hi-hats at 60 beats per minute and then at 80 beats per minute.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
Let's now talk about playing the ride cymbal. Like the hi-hat, the ride is also frequently used to play quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, or eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now this is by no means a hard and fast rule, but it is common to play a shorter and crisper hi-hat part during the verse of popular songs, and longer ride cymbal parts during the chorus and instrumental sections. Let's hear how eighth notes sound on the ride at 60 and 80 BPM.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
All right, let's talk about the snare drum. In popular music, the bass drum establishes the primary beat, while the snare drum plays in opposition, providing syncopation and establishing the backbeat. With the bass drum playing beats 1 and 3, the snare drum backbeat is played on beats 2 and 4. Let's count out our 4 beats playing the snare drum on every beat using both hands, and then we'll isolate beats 2 and 4 using the left hand only so you can hear the difference.
1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
It can sometimes be helpful to integrate your right hand in order to better feel the time. Let me show you what this looks like. I'll keep all 4 quarter notes going with my right hand, and I'll play the snare drum on beats 2 and 4 with my left.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now let's increase the tempo to 80 beats per minute. Just like we talked about with the bass drum, make sure that you practice 60 beats per minute for at least a couple of minutes with no mistakes before you start to increase your tempo. Remember that as you start out, accuracy is more important than speed.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now that we've heard the individual placements of the bass drum, the snare drum, the hi-hats, and the ride cymbal, it's time to put it all together and build our basic rock beat. Let's start with a quarter note rhythm on the hi-hats. nice and slow, 60 beats per minute. I'll play 4 measures of hi-hats, and then I'll add just the snare drum on beats 2 and 4. I'm going to play a few more measures of the hi-hat and the snare just to get some comfort and confidence in those two limbs operating together harmoniously. If 60 beats per minute feels too fast, feel free to slow it down to a pace where you're playing both instruments consistently with the timing of the metronome. Finally, I'll add the bass drum on beats 1 and 3. And this is probably where it gets a little tricky because your mind may not quite be prepared for the limb independence that is required to pull this off. That's okay. Go nice and slow, and again, if 60 beats per minute is too fast to keep up with, back it off to a tempo you can manage. Slow at this point is much more useful than fast.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. At the snare. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Add the bass. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Here we go. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1.
For a variation, you can introduce the instruments in a different order to see if that feels better. For instance, start with a quarter note rhythm on the hi-hats, and then bring in the bass drum on 1 and 3. With the hi-hats and the bass drum underway, then add the snare on 2 and 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Add the snare. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
For another variation, start off with the bass and snare together on counts 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 respectively. With the bass and snare underway, bring in the hi-hat on 1, 2, 3, and 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Add the hat. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Once you've got some momentum going, try starting out with all 3 components right from the top. This is eventually where all this coordination is leading to. Remember that it can help dramatically to count out loud while you play so you internalize the rhythm you're starting to create. Practice playing the basic beat at 60 beats per minute for several minutes in a row until it feels consistent and smooth and you're able to keep the beat going without making mistakes. Once you've got a good grip on 60 beats per minute, try increasing the tempo to 80 BPM.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
Now let's subdivide the hi-hats to play eighth notes at 60 beats per minute. Play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and on the hi-hats. Then add the snare on beats 2 and 4. And finally, the bass drum on beats 1 and 3.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and
Now let's bring that up to an 80 BPM tempo.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and
While you're playing the basic beat, you can challenge yourself by trying to remove an instrument from the equation and then add them back in, all while keeping time with the other instruments. I'll demonstrate what I mean in the next clip by removing the hi-hat while continuing to play the bass and snare drum before adding the hi-hat back into the mix.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and
The point of this is that you start to train your brain around the idea of limb independence. We'll talk all about limb independence in much more detail in my full course coming right out. Now let's try to move the right hand from the hi-hat over to the ride cymbal, play for a few bars, and then move back to the hi-hat. We'll play the same eighth note pulse, but you'll get to feel the challenge of moving your arm from one side of the kit to another.
Go back to the right, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and
Congratulations! You are playing the basic rock drum beat. And now I want to show you just how applicable this is to the music you know and love across multiple genres. Here's a few selections that I'll play along with so you can hear the basic drumming framework supporting these great songs. hope this inspires you to go find your own playlist, put on your favorite songs, and start to jam along. I hope you learned a lot from this lesson. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel, please click like and subscribe so you can keep up with my other videos. And be sure to leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of this lesson. I'm looking forward to reading your feedback and hearing about the progress you make on the drums. Once again, if you're watching this section as part of my free mini course and you're excited about going further, you're going to want to enroll in my full course entitled Become a Rock, Pop, and Country Drummer. I'm going to leave information on how to get enrolled in the full course in the description below. Hop on over to backbeatdrumschool.com to learn more. Thanks for watching and enjoy your progress on the drums.